We're working on an early 2000 venture van, and we're going to be looking at rust repair and putting some universal rocker guards on it. The universal ones aren't quite as custom made as you would get from the factory, but I used the universal. They were $41 each, and I'll show you how we walk through and put them on this van. You can see the rust is quite extensive. This here is a shot of the driver's side. Even starts eating on the door, bottom of the fender. The bottom of the rocker panel here is just eaten right away. There isn't even any bottom part there. That's just the inner part of the body panel there. Rust on the front fender here, and so we're going to be replacing the fenders as well. You can see it hasn't got up into any higher here behind the door, so that's good. You start by jacking up the van, taking off the tire on the side you're working on for better access, and putting a jack stand underneath. I started removing the rocker panel by cutting along the seam here. This is kind of tricky because if you cut up to here where the old rocker panel is, along that line, then there's just about nothing to join to, and you're going to get a little bit of a problem. So on 2 or 3 areas of this van, I had to cut below the welds, and these here, you can see all those holes there are factory welds, and you'll need to drill them out. You can see all the salt and sand that's accumulated over the years just laying in there, trapped in all these places, so clean that out really well. You'll have to do a little bit of scraping and that to get at the van. I've cleaned this up somewhat. I'm just in the middle of cleaning it right now, and you can see the bottom here. I just took a grinder and I ground the butt welds off, the factory welds, and then I'm in here scraping and cleaning up. It's the metal from falling out. You'll have quite a bit of a dirty amount of dirt and rust fall off. So what I do is I use cardboard. I don't know, some people do, some don't. I tend to like it, and then it can catch all that junk, and it helps just keep the floor cleaner. And it's not so hard on the knees or your elbows when you're crawling around, you know, fixing all the different places and looking underneath and things like that. So here's a shot again of the rocker panel, how it's cut, and you can see stuff all accumulated up in here. Clean that out as well. It's a shot you can see of the factory weld as they go along. This here is a special tool that I used for drilling out the welds. It's got a little drill bit here, and it's got a bigger metal bit there. And as you can see right here, that's the factory weld. I have drilled through the outer casing of the rocker panel, the original one, drilled the head of the weld off, and now in behind there is the other panel, and you do not want to drill through that, or you'll just make a hole right through the vehicle. I broke this bit when I first started. This first time I used it, and I got concerned, and then I figured out, well, what would really work good is what I decided to do. I drilled an 1/8 inch hole in every weld. I center punched it, then I took and drilled right through the vehicle with an 1/8 inch bit. Then I came along with this and used it more as a guide and drilled it. So watch when you're in there, because rusted metal can vibrate on you and break bits quite easy. So I broke quite a few of them. I won't tell you how many, but if you try and you find that you break a bit, don't get too upset about it. Just ask for a drill bit to cut out factory welds on panels, and they'll sell you one. There's a set screw right there that you can undo to flip the bit, because it has a new bit on each end. That's me drilling the welds out there. You can just see how you just go along. In the center of the video between the doors, so here would be the driver's door and here would be the sliding door. This panel is reinforced, and so it's you know, it takes more to drill through it. It's harder. It's just, you know, so take your time. What I'm doing here is I'm just going to lift this up and slide the rocker panel underneath, as I'll show you here shortly. Now you can see how I just take a chisel after and just lift it up. So cold chisel, flat chisel, and a hammer, wherever you want these pieces off, works really good for getting that out. This is the universal rocker panel. I took rocker guard and I sprayed the inside before I put it on, just to undercoat that. I'm lifting up pieces of the panel as we go along so that it will receive the new rocker panel that's waiting down here now. This is the center of the vehicle. I could just spot or just rivet. I use rivets to put it in there. And here is where, if I would have cut off straight, there wouldn't have been anything for this rocker panel, the new one, to bite to. So what I did is I just, when I cut it off, I went down about a ½ inch, 3/4 maybe, 5/8, whatever, and just dropped it. Then I undercoated this piece here, and this piece I shot undercoating underneath it, and then I laid it on top, then I riveted it. And so under the door, the same thing. If you just go straight across, all of a sudden you're going to see, hey, it's not, you know, it's a little bit short. So just drill out your welds, slide this under, position it, you know, check the front and the back, check underneath before you start riveting, and then just take it one rivet at a time. I started in the center so that I could move the back and front as needed and put it in that way. Just a cheapo rivet gun. I think I paid $15 for that. That's all it did. I used, and I probably used, well, I used well over 100 rivets because I bought a box of 100 and it went empty, so I had to go back and get more. So be prepared for putting a lot of rivets in. I followed up the rivets with seam sealer, and I spread it on the rivet itself, and then I spread along the seam, and I tried to shove it in a little bit as I went along to make sure that I could do all I was able to. I also undercoated the body before I put this rocker panel in, and what happened is there's tar on here and there's tar in the car, and I'm hoping that when the two touch and get in the hot sun, that will help create a seal underneath. Then I'm following up with clear seam sealer. You can use black, you can use white. I chose clear, and went along all the seams, front and back, on the ends, things like that. Through here I seam sealed up and along, and I also put some over the rivets there. So this is going along. You can see I still got 1 or 2 left to do there. The picture's dark, of course. You can see that I could have used a flash on this. But that's the vehicle after the rocker panel is in place, riveted on. I let the seam sealer dry for an hour, maybe a little more. Then I went over it with rock guard and shot it all in with black rock guard. The fender, as we pointed out, was rotted on the front and rotted on the back. I didn't take you through step by step on replacing the fender, but basically there's 3 bolts on top, there's 1 bolt here, and there's 2 bolts here, then 1 on the very bottom, and the fender just slides out. There's a little bolt right in the center there too you'll have to find. I just pull the fender back and you'll see it, and you can undo it. So these are all number 10. This one up here might be a number 8. And you can just slide the fender off and put the new one on. Clean up around the area. Don't leave any salt or anything like that hanging around, or sand. Blow it all out if you have a compressor, and then put back. There's a kind of a felt type barrier that they put in here for, I think, for sound, and it also catches a lot of the water and things like that from going through the fender, hitting the door. I washed it out really good, dried it, then I put it in, and you might want to do the same. This is the fender where we took it off. There's two little points here on the light. They just slide into the fender, so don't forget, as you're installing the fender, start by sliding the headlight and park light into position, and then put it on the vehicle. You can use a punch to help move it a little bit, align the holes. Look where the old marks are. This here is the plastic inner fender. I never took it all off. I didn't need to. And this is the van that is after it's finished. It's a new front fender, new rocker panel. I just sprayed it with the spray bomb, base coat, clear coat. Sprayed it over the rocker guard. On the ends of the rocker guards, there is a factory plug, kind of, I call it a plug, that fits in the end. I saved those and I tarred it really well on the inside and the outside, and then I riveted it onto the rocker panel, and then I tarred along the end to seal it. So do what you have to do to keep the water from flying in there. This here is opening of the door on the driver's side and the sliding door. So that's the other side, as you can tell. And the job took me a few afternoons, but you can do it yourself, even if you've done it, for the very first time. Be sure to put rivets in the bottom wherever it allows you. There will be chunks missing. It's up to you if you want to put in a new piece of tin. I didn't have time. Actually, I wasn't even in my garage doing this. I just did it in some people's garage, and they understood that with all the rust going on, and I just had a few tools. And by rocker guarding it, I also sprayed underneath the vehicle. I crawled under it and I looked, and wherever there was rust, I used rust killer on it and let it, kill the rust. Then I went over with a separate can of undercoating tar. It's a 2-component thing, so it doesn't crack like ordinary tar. And I just sprayed all underneath the van, just wherever I saw rust wanting to form, and then I tried to seal it in. And so I guess what'll happen is some of the rust where there's holes, well, the water will run in, but hopefully it'll also run out, because there's a little bit of drain pockets on the bottom from the factory. So they want that rust out of there in water as quick as they can, salty water. This is an Ontario, Canada van, and there's apparently, I've never been there in the winter, but they say they just salt the highways really heavy, and it's very hard on the vehicles. I also found that the lug nuts on the tires were on extremely tight. They just chattered and squealed as they came off. So I took them off and I put on anti-seize, and that's something you might want to do too if you're in an area with lots of salt in the roads, and keep those lug nuts from seizing onto the wheel. Also, on a car that I worked on there as well, we had to bang the rim off with a hammer because it was seized right on, and so we put anti-seize around this area here and then on the threads as well. You just need a thin skim. You don't have to really go wild with it. If you have any questions, Wright will answer you. I used 1/4 inch rivets, 1/8 inch by 1/4 inch long, and that's what I attached everything with. So maybe you'll give a vehicle a try and let me know how it turns out. Thanks for watching.